Greetings, everyone. So for those of you who are on the call, I think we should go ahead and get started. It's about 3 minutes past the hour. And so while I'm making brief introductions, I wanted to just launch a short little poll that you all can take part of. Look at it, it'll only be, I think, 3 questions just about kind of the basics of crowdfunding and what your organization does and what you're looking to get out of the Salud for All campaign. So I'm going to go ahead and launch that poll now. And then while I'm doing my introduction, you can go ahead and fill that out and submit that as necessary. Okay, perfect. So thanks everybody for joining today's webinar. I'd like to share first for those who were on the first call, a bit of an overview and recap of the Salud for All campaign, but then also for those of you who weren't, I also want to talk about kind of the larger picture of this campaign and the communications and kind of visibility component that is integrated as well. So again, thank you for joining us, and we just really want to stress the central importance of health equity to HIP's overall direction, especially under our new president, Anamari Argelagos. So the Salud for All campaign is first and foremost about listening and learning from the organizations and stakeholders, much like those of you on this webinar today, who have long been working to eliminate health disparities in a number of different ways in a number of communities all across California and beyond. So we hope to be able to provide multiple forums for highlighting the important work that you are all doing and bring information to funders and our larger audience an understanding of the prevailing barriers facing the Latino community and other underserved communities to living healthy, productive lives. We believe that an important first step is to explore and understand the social determinants of health within the Latino community and how they're inextricably linked to deep-seated issues of inequity. That's why HIP, along with support from the California Endowment, launched the Salud for All campaign. With this campaign, we are aiming to accomplish 2 central goals, the first of which is to raise awareness and create a sense of urgency among national-level funders of the pressing needs of Latino communities in California. The second is to increase visibility and voice of Latino community organizations in California, highlighting the breadth and depth of this work, its many intersections, and the power of working collectively to advance health equity for Latinos and other communities of color. So a major piece of this campaign is not only the crowdfunding portion, but is to connect and partner with leading community organizations and networks to hold briefings and webinars that convene a national group of foundation leaders to learn about best practices for eliminating health disparities. We hope that by engaging funders and spotlighting organizational partners, we will ultimately see increased investments in health equity for Latino communities in California and the rest of the country. So in order to do so, we want to hear from you. We ask you to share with us any content, whether it be reports, articles, blog posts, etc., anything that's really germane to the work at hand, that we can in turn disseminate to our membership, our national network, through our multiple social media channels, and of course, the Salud for All homepage itself. We really want Salud for All to capture the energy and the sheer scope of issue areas impacting health outcomes for Latinos and others in the state. And to this end, we have quite a few upcoming events that are also part of the Salud for All campaign. So on June 19th, we're going to have a report pre-release meeting in Chicago directly prior to the Grantmakers in Health Conference. And so this is a report that we've commissioned UCSF to run on kind of the landscape and mapping of health-related organizations in California and the work being done, and a lot of statistics and data around that. So we'll also be having upcoming content webinars, including one on the release of the report that will then dive into this data, as well as bring partners and funders and other organizations together to really explore important themes like immigration and health, mental health issues within the Latino community, aging, and others. So stay tuned for those upcoming content webinars. Also, stay tuned for an in-person meeting that we'll be looking to hold in the fall of 2018. So for all of you who are already on our listserv, you'll be getting follow-up information on all these events. For those of you who aren't, feel free to email me at michael@hiponline.org, or you can also go to hiponline.org, which is our website, and scroll down to the bottom where you can put your email in to be added to our newsletter listserv. So with that, I'd like to just kind of pause there and see if anybody has any questions, and you can do so by either clicking on the hand raising icon at the top of your interface, or likewise, also type in a question at any time to the Q&A box. So, okay, so I'm not seeing any questions, so I'm going to go ahead and continue. So for today's webinar, webinar number 2, we're going to be, of course, looking at the recap of Salute for All that I just did. And then before Anita, my colleague Anita Gallagher, is going to dive into really the ins and outs of promoting your campaign before she gets to talking about the value of peer-to-peer promotion. And then, of course, making the most out of matching funds, and I think I'll help out in that area as well. And then we'll finish off with some question and answer and a discussion session with us on the webinar today. That way we can get kind of a better feeling and sense of who is going to be running projects and how these projects are related. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to my colleague Anita, and she can take us through how to promote your campaign.
Thanks very much, Michael. It's great to be here today to take you through a little bit of how you can make the most of this opportunity to run a crowdfunding campaign on HipGive in the context of the overall Salute for All campaign. If you were able to join us last time, you'll already be familiar with the 4 stages of a crowdfunding campaign. These are the 4 stages that we have seen over and over again are the vital parts of a really successful crowdfunding campaign. So first of all, you start off with a strong project, an attractive donor-centered project. Then you have to think carefully about how you're going to promote that project and get the word out. And your process is not complete if you don't undertake some kind of peer-to-peer promotion, because we know that crowdfunding is such a social way of raising funds. And of course, at the end, there are some important steps to close out your project and keep in touch with your donors afterwards. So in the first webinar that we did a couple of weeks ago, we talked quite a lot about how to get your project up and running on HipGive. If you haven't done so already, please do go onto hipgive.org, create a username, and click on the Create button, and you'll see the really easy step-by-step process for creating your project. Today, I wanted to dive a little bit more into how to promote your project and how to use that peer-to-peer contacts to raise more funds for your cause. So we're taking from the starting point that you'll already have an idea of a title, your content, the way to describe your project. You may already have thought of the video or some of the images that you will be able to use. And of course, you'll already have a goal of how much money you want to raise through this campaign. So once you have those in place, when you're thinking about how to promote your campaign, it's really important to know your audience. I like to say to a lot of people that I work with that the general public, this idea of just promoting your project to the people who are out there, that's really gives us a false sense of security, because the general public as per se doesn't really exist. What does exist is lots of different types of publics, lots of different types of audiences. And of course, you want your organization to fall on the ears and in the hearts and in the hands and in the wallets of the people that are most likely to want to support your cause, to want to support your project. So really do think carefully about who is most likely to give to your campaign, why are they most likely to give to your campaign, how much are they likely to give to your campaign, and think carefully about what might motivate them. Because if we think that some people might give readily, but some people might be more difficult to convince, then we really want to focus our promotional campaign, our communication strategy on those messages that will reach out to them and convince them to take that last step of saying, yes, this is important to me. This is something that I want to contribute to financially. And it's also important at this stage to think a little bit about the maths of the situation, because crowdfunding, inevitably, you need a crowd. A crowdfunding campaign will not be successful if just 1 or 2 or 3 people contribute, but we want dozens and dozens of people to contribute to your campaign. So think about the numbers. Think about how many people you can already reach out to. And if of all those people, only perhaps 5 or 10% were able to say yes, then would you be able to raise enough money to reach your goal? Or is it a case that you need to think carefully about how to start off your campaign by reaching a wider audience, that you're going to have to be able to contact more and more people, so that if inevitably only a small percentage of those people actually end up contributing to your campaign, that you will have enough contributors to reach your financial goal. So the first step is think carefully and know your audience, who you're targeting your campaign towards. Once you've established your audience, then it's time in your campaign to think about crafting a really strong message and a call to action. The good thing about this is once you have your message, once you have your slogan or your call to action, you can use this everywhere. So it's a kind of a create once, use everywhere kind of strategy. I love this example. It's from the organization Charity Water, because it shows how they combine so many different elements of a convincing message into a really short email. They use a convincing photograph, an uplifting photograph, a positive photograph that allows us to connect with other human beings and see the people who are going to be benefiting from this project. It has a really strong, catchy title. It says, "Change someone's entire life story in 1 minute." Now that is attractive and appealing. That makes me want to get involved in any case. They, of course, have a short text. People read less and less nowadays, so it's important that the communications we send out are short and concise. Just a couple of paragraphs there. And you can see as well that there's a number of calls to action, a number of action buttons. In the photograph, it says donate now. In the text, the donate now is underlined. And of course, there's a big blue button that says donate now. So again, they're being very clear about the action that they want us to take when we read their email. Now, email is generally the cornerstone of crowdfunding campaigns nowadays. It's a really powerful way of getting in touch with a really large number of people. But email shouldn't be the only thing that you do to promote your campaign. The strongest crowdfunding campaigns are built up of diverse communication channels to reach your audience in different ways. So I put together a little graphic that kind of helps us understand the strengths and the weaknesses of different types of communications platforms that we have nowadays. And the challenge here is to really think about how you can best connect with your audience. So perhaps you set out on your campaign saying, our audience is going to be young people who already live in our local community, and we want them to get involved in these health projects. So you have to think, right, well, those young people, where do they hang out? Do they hang out and spend more time online? Or is it going to be easier for us to find them in real life, in different types of events or organizations? If we choose instead to target local business people, then how do we find them? Their social media use is probably very different to the young people, and we may find them in different types of events, or they may appreciate different styles of communication and different platforms of communication. What we have found in HipGive over the years is that while crowdfunding is very much driven by social media and online communication, your campaign does not have to be run exclusively online. So you see on the online, offline gradient there, of course, social media and email are strongly online, but you can combine real life events. We've had people go to business meetings, chambers of commerce, people who go and find the local clubs and associations that are working in the area and do presentations to explain the campaign and the project to those groups. You can also think about using the traditional press. You can write a press release, have a press conference, and make a big song and a dance about the importance of the work that you're doing. We find as well that many organizations like to run a kind of a launch event, a kind of a party or a get-together the day before they launch the crowdfunding campaign. And of course, that's a great way to get more people involved. Everybody likes coming to some kind of a party and and it's a great way to spread the word and get more people excited about it. It's easier to convey excitement in person sometimes than online. And of course, there's some people who, even though we live in an online world, like to get a personal phone call. And the personalization of our communications is a very important factor. So think too about the power of your communications platforms to appeal to people on a personal level. Now, for some people, that may be more important than other people. Again, if your audience is going to be those important businessmen in the local community, then perhaps a phone call is the way to go to show that you have really identified them as an important person within your campaign. But if you're hoping to get, hundreds of young people involved, well, then maybe they are more used to being contacted online. But again, personalization online is an up and coming trend. And there's a lot of evidence to show that millennials and the younger generations live in a very personalized world. They're used to having technology and communications be bespoke to their needs and their interests. And so even if we're using platforms which we might conceive of as mass communication platforms, like Facebook or like Twitter, if we can personalize our communications by responding directly to that person or using their name or referring to their particular contribution, then that's a way that we can make those channels more personalized and more effective over the course of the campaign. So there's no set answer about which channels you should use. Your selection of communications channels really does need to go in line with your selection of your audience and where you think you can best connect to them. Another aspect of your promotional campaign is going to be the timing. How, when, and where are you going to be sending out those messages? So do try and get organized. Again, we've done a little bit of research in all the organizations that have used HipGive over the years, and all of the organizations that have been successful come back to us and say, what really helped us was to put things on paper, to set out a calendar with the dates of our campaign and work out when we were going to send that save the date reminder, when we were going to send the first information about the project, how many times we were going to remind people during the day of the launch of the campaign that they could come on board with their contribution. Sit down with your team and work out who needs to do what, on what days, and what the key messages are going to be throughout your campaign. And that will just let things run so much more smoothly during campaign. And then you will have the time, and therefore, to follow up and do that kind of personalized communication with everyone that is getting involved and contributing. So those are the main tips for thinking about your promotional campaign. We are going to be sending out, in fact, a little guide or an interactive, what we call a DIY marketing plan. So a worksheet that you can go through carefully, systematically, answer some of these questions, jot down your ideas, and come up with a really integrated plan for how to run your communications campaign. So the checklist would be: make sure you know your audience, craft a strong message and a strong call to action in your campaigns, think about the channels which are going to be most relevant for your target audience, and get organized with an editorial calendar. So if you do all that, the result is going to be that lots of people are hearing about your campaign, and they have the information about what you want to do, how you're going to do it, and how to give money and contribute to the campaign. So sounds good, right? What we have found is things can still go a little bit wrong at that point, because people's behavior is unpredictable, and having the information doesn't necessarily mean that people will act on that information. So at this stage, it's important to ask what could go wrong. If people aren't acting on the information, one really strong way to get around that is to integrate a peer-to-peer aspect into your crowdfunding campaign. And this is something that you can build in right from the start. I have been reading over the last couple of weeks a newly published book by Jeremy Hyman's and Henry Timms. It's called New Power. You may not recognize their names, but in fact, Henry Timms is one of the founders, the founder of the Giving Tuesday movement. And so there is no one better than Henry to tell us how ideas spread and how campaigns can really take off. I mean, Giving Tuesday is one of the big success stories in philanthropy of the last 6-7 years, not only in the US, but throughout the world. And he has taken what he's learned about Giving Tuesday and studied so many other movements that have been happening around the world recently to really try to understand what are the common denominators and what works to make a movement spread and make people come on board and become mobilized for causes. And he clearly states that people actually begin changing their behavior when an idea gets validated by their community, rarely when it is not. So this idea that ideas spread sideways, just because we share something and ask somebody to get involved doesn't mean they will. But if one of their peers, one of their friends, somebody in their close circle asks them to get involved, then, or shows that they are already involved, then that person is much more likely to change their behavior. And this is played out in movements around the world in so many different facets and ways nowadays. The good thing is, in that book, Jeremy and Henry give us a really useful recipe for how to make our movements and our campaigns be the ones that generate this interest in participation and getting involved. I'm sure lots of you remember the movement that we're seeing in the picture, people pouring buckets full of ice cold water over their heads. Apparently a nonsensical thing to do, but it had a great purpose, of course, which was raising funds for research into the syndromes. And so by studying the ice bucket challenge, by studying these different movements, Henry and Jeremy have come up with this recipe which is called ACE. If you want to communicate in a way that people will want to get involved and people will spread the idea to their peer networks, then you need three things. The first is it has to be actionable. What you propose, the communications that you're sharing have to have a really strong call to action at their heart. The call to action in the ice bucket challenge was very clear. It wasn't just a case of, pouring a bucket of ice cold water over your head. You had to nominate other people. And this is what, made it spread. Your communications also have to enable people to be connected. They have to link you to people you care about or values that you share and makes you feel part of a community. Nowadays, when we receive so many different types of communications, we're constantly bombarded by information. What stands out is content that speaks to our identity and our values. So again, when we're thinking about how to craft our communications to share our crowdfunding campaign, it's not just enough to share the information or to share the statistics or to say, this is a really important problem because such a big percentage of the population faces these issues. But we have to link those problems back to identity and back to values and explain to people why they should care and why so many other people like them already are caring. So show that connection. I saw this very recently in a Save the Children campaign, and that has been running throughout Mexico. In every single photograph that they display on social media to raise money for their sponsorship campaign, they don't just show the children in the photograph, they show a volunteer or a member of the board or a person like you or like I interacting with the children in that photograph. And that helps us place ourselves in that frame of reference and feel that I want to be part of somebody like that. That person has the same values that I have. And they're showing us that through the photograph by showing the person in touch with the children and not just the children themselves. And the other part of the recipe that they share with us in the New Power book is that your communications and the ideas have to be extensible, by which they mean you have to share an idea that people can adapt or make their own. We can't just expect nowadays people, if we say do X, that they will do exactly X. People today, and especially younger generations today, they have an intrinsic wish to get involved and to participate and to imprint their own kind of stamp on their activities. And so we need to be aware that once we throw out an idea, it will spread more quickly if people feel they can make it their own. So you need to have a little bit about flexibility about how we ask people to get involved. So those are the three tips that we can take on board when we're crafting our communications, when we're writing our messaging, we're thinking about how can we make this a Facebook post or an email or a telephone call or a video that people will really want to share with their peer networks. But if we just do that job as maybe the communications team or the fundraising team or the core staff of our organization, then there'll be limits to how far we're able to spread our campaign. If we really want to make the most of peer-to-peer networks, then of course we have to ask more and more people to get on board and share our content and our communications on our behalf. In the book, in New Power, they call these people connected connectors. Because we're recognizing nowadays that online sharing takes place through many small groups, not via the single post or tweet of a few influencers. Content goes viral via people sharing with their friends. And I think that's really interesting. Even a year or 2 years ago, when we were teaching about crowdfunding campaigns, we would always have said, try and find an influencer, try and find somebody who has a really huge social media following, or when they post something, there's so much more interaction, or an influential person in the local community in real life. But what is being borne out by the evidence is that those kind of one-off tweets or posts or shares, even if they're by the most famous celebrity in the world, do not have the same impact as sharing content that people want to share within their own networks and with their own group of friends. And this probably comes down to the fact that, again, we feel validated and we want to emulate the behavior of people that we respect in our close circles, not necessarily those of celebrities or people who are far removed from our daily lives. It has to do with social proof and validation. So if you want to find those connected connectors, those people who will really take our message and share it out among their own social groups and their own groups of friends and go beyond our closest circles in the organization, then it takes a little bit of structure. By just throwing out our content, by just posting and sharing emails, it won't happen naturally or organically. We have to sit down and think, who are these connected connectors? Who are these people who already have some knowledge of our organization, of the importance of our work, and who will be enthusiastic about actively sharing the content that we create with their own networks and friends. So what we can do is, sit down as a team and brainstorm. Who are the connectors that we already can identify? How can we bring them on board? What will make it attractive for them to be involved in our campaign? And then once we do have them on board, how can we support them, providing the orientation about the project and the campaign and the motivation to keep on sharing throughout the duration of the campaign. And that phrase, bring on the board, has a little bit of a double meaning as well, because the most natural people to begin with this role of being our connected connectors, of being ambassadors for our campaigns, are the members of the board of governors of the organizations that we work for. And so often in crowdfunding campaigns, the communicating staff or the fundraising staff, they feel like this is their project and they have to run the campaign. But really the most successful campaigns are when everybody comes on board. So it's really important to sit down early on in the planning and think, in our board of governors and our leadership, who are the people that will be able to spread the content and the ask and the call to action of our campaign as far and wide as possible? And what will they need to help them do that? And in a week or so's time, as we're coming up to the launch of the Salute for All official crowdfunding campaigns, we'll be sharing with you a campaign handbook, and we'll have a couple more tools and social media posts and suggested email texts that you can use. And that's a great way of, taking the tips and the content that we suggest in the handbook, and you can share that out to those connected connectors and say, look, here's an example of a social media post. Why don't you copy paste that, but feel free to adapt it and add in your own opinion or your own valorization of why this is important. And you'll find that once you give them concrete tools and materials to work with, it will be much easier for them to share on your content in a way that is authentic and meaningful in their social circles. And finally, moving towards the end of the peer-to-peer section, and this also, in fact, is a little bit to do with closing out your campaign and what to do after your campaign. It's really important to bear in mind that the social media platforms that we use are not broadcasting platforms. They're best optimized when we think of them as communities. So being a part of a community means you have to engage. You can't just broadcast. You can't just post. You have to respond. You have to initiate conversations. You have to take part. And what I'm sharing on the screen right there is a great example from Greenpeace. I think this is from last year. I came across it. And what I loved is not only did they have that, really inspiring, attractive post at the start about how Emma Thompson is helping Greenpeace, which obviously she's a key influencer in their campaigns. But I love the interaction. So if you see the comments that follow, somebody says, thank you, Emma Thompson, and Greenpeace responds, and thank you, Chris, for everything you do to protect free speech. It's just a great example of responding, personalizing by using the name of the person, and being enthusiastic about, keeping them engaged with the campaign. And they do that over and over again for every single person that comments on that thread. And that's a really useful strategy. It's small. Maybe it means that you do have to have somebody very active or vigilant on your social media during the campaign. But if you're the person that's ever commented in one of those public posts and you receive a personalized answer back, recognizing you with your name and saying thank you, the little burst of adrenaline or good feeling or satisfaction inside you is so powerful. And that encourages you to stay involved and to feel part of that campaign more than any other type of communication probably could. So we're validating people's contributions in every single way possible. Now that's what can be done on Facebook and on other types of social media, of course. But I did want to share with you that when you do run your campaign on HipGive, you also have the ability throughout the campaign to encourage people to interact with you by leaving comments. So you can see on the right-hand side of the screen different types of comments that people have left with the campaign. These ones are anonymous. People can either choose to leave their name or to just be anonymous but leave their comment. And you can respond to these people, and you can also download at any time during your campaign what we call a funders list. So in your dashboard, you'll see a screen. Part of it is in the bottom right-hand side of the screen right now saying managing your project. You'll have a yellow button that says download funders list, and that provides you with an Excel document with the names and the emails of the people that have contributed to your campaign. So it's really important not just to wait until the end of the campaign, until it's closed out and you have your final amount raised, to decide to look, I wonder who gave us some money. We need to send out an overall thank you. What you can be doing is every day during the campaign, checking who's given today and send them a thank you message in real time. And you never know, by sending them a thank you message, you can maybe add in another little line saying, and I know that you've already donated, that's wonderful. You can still help us by continuing to share the campaign among your own networks. And that way you recruit people who are donors into being also ambassadors or connected connectors for your cause. So it's a great way to just keep the momentum of the campaign going, is by making those thank yous in real time and showing people that they're valued as part of the campaign and they can play an even bigger role. So to recap, the importance of peer-to-peer is that it will help you reach new audiences, reach a much wider group of people than you would be able to on your own. You can ace it by making ideas that people really want to get involved with and they can share and adapt and make them their own. You want to find the connected connectors, those people who, when they share your content in an authentic way, will reach much larger audiences. And you want to make sure that you're engaging and saying thank you and making people feel part of the community that is linked to their values and their identity. But as if that wasn't enough, we do have one last trick up our sleeves, especially for the Salute for All campaign. And that is $10,000 in matching funds. Michael, I know that you've been very involved in making sure that these funds are available in Salute for All as an incentive for all the participating organizations. Would you like to come back on and share us a little bit more about what organizations can do to get their share of those matching funds?
Sure. Thank you so much, Anita, and thank you so much for all that valuable information. I know that's a lot of tips from a lot of experience and tried and true things that work, so thank you. So yeah, as Anita was saying, one of the biggest values of crowdfunding with HipGive and specifically the Salute for All campaign is our matching funds. So for this particular campaign, we've essentially raised $10,000 in matching funds thanks to the generous support of the California Endowment. So in offering these, I just want to kind of go over quickly the how, when, what, and who to make sure that you really understand them, the guidelines clearly, and then can clearly communicate those to your donors. So with that said, let's go over a couple of points of these matching funds. So first off, who can participate? So essentially any California-based organization that is participating in Salute for All by running a live HipGive crowdfunding campaign focused on health issues in the Latino community will be eligible for these funds. So again, just to reiterate, Salute for All will be officially beginning on June 28th. So I, compel you now to go ahead and start your building of your campaign as soon as possible, so that you have plenty of lead time to kind of polish it up before the official campaign launch at the end of this month. And so number two, how will the funds be allocated? So we're going to split these $10,000 up into 2 different days. So the first will be on the launch day itself, June 28th, which is a Thursday, and we'll offer $5,000 that day, and the period will begin essentially at 12 p.m. Pacific Central Time or Pacific Standard Time. So this is to say that donations made on the HipGive platform will be matched or duplicated starting at 12 noon on the 28th in the order in which they come in until the $5,000 are completely depleted. And I believe we have a bar on the landing page that essentially denotes how much of those $5,000 are left as they become depleted. So it kind of goes a long way to building the sort of buzz around the campaign and you know, seeing your donation doubled. So 3, what is the fine print? So there is no limit on the total amount of matched donations that an organization can receive. However, there is a cap on the total amount that can be matched from any individual donor. And that cap is essentially $500. So the maximum amount matched per individual donor will be $500. What does this mean for participating organizations? Well, funds are likely to run out quickly. So to benefit from these matching funds, please remember to advise your donors to donate as soon as the matching funds are released at 12 noon. Remember that the maximum amount matched per donor will be $500 regardless of the number of times a person gives. So for example, if someone makes 2 donations, one of $250 and another one of $300, totaling $550, only 500 of that 550 will be matched, meaning you would receive 1,050 total in the end after those donations. Matching funds do not count towards your crowdfunding goal and will be counted separately and added to the total you raise at the end of your campaign. So just something to note for when you're establishing your goal for your project. Donations are matched in the order in which they are received, meaning that a donation made at 12 noon will be matched before a donation given at 1 p.m. and so on. As soon as the matching funds, in this case $5,000 per day, run out, no more donations will be matched for that day. And finally, when will I find out about matching funds results? Since there's going to be like a really high volume of donations during Salute for All, and our team wants to make sure that all the matching funds are allocated and accounted for, we really suggest to review the donation data carefully, and we'll announce the results a few days after the matching days. We understand that there's going to be a lot of excitement and anticipation to hear the results of the matching funds, so we truly appreciate your patience while we really comb through these to make sure that they're allocated appropriately. So with that said, I think I want to hand it back over to Anita, and she can go over some of the ins and outs of matching funds and how they work in real life. And I think she has some examples as well of successfully utilizing and winning those matching funds.
That's right. Thanks, Michael. You did a pretty comprehensive rundown of the rules there. So I hope everyone has got a good handle on how it all works. And as I said, we will be sending out a handbook as well, and all this will be shared in writing. There's a couple of examples here that I wanted to share that illustrate exactly about the matching funds, and they also illustrate a lot of the points that I was sharing a little bit earlier on about, you know, how to run a really strong communications campaign. So here's an example from El Centro Hispano, and one of the outstanding things that they said to us in their feedback after one of their very successful campaigns was, you know, be prepared. You've got to invest time. You've got to treat this as a project in its own right. It's not something that will just happen magically by itself. And what they did was, you know, studied carefully the rules of the matching funds contest so that within the organization there was no confusion whatsoever about how the funds would be allocated. They made sure that the project that they selected was powerful. It was really aligned with people's interests. And in this case, they chose to talk about the achievement gap in terms of education, which is something obviously could be very easily adapted because we know there is a huge gap in terms of healthcare and access to healthcare. They did a short video. They worked hard to increase their database because they recognized that if they had a small database, then no matter how wonderful their campaign and their communications content was, if it wasn't reaching enough people, the campaign wouldn't be successful. And then before the actual launch date of the campaign, they sent out a save the date email. And then they started, you know, ramping up their big email campaign as well. And I think that save the date is a really important step because it gets people mentally prepared that something is coming and something important. During the day of the matching funds, they actually sent 3 emails, and in each of those emails, they included a progress update saying, you know, our goal is to raise $3,000. So far we have, you know, 800, 1,500, with really, you know, tangible information that makes people get excited about, we're getting there, come on board. And what they also did during the matching funds day was to thank everybody in real time throughout the day. And they were thanking people on social media, and they were thanking people, you know, using the information, that the email address provided by HipGive, to thank them in real time. And as I said, that doesn't just make people, you know, have this great feel-good glow inside. It means that people that have already given are more inspired to share and ask more people to give in your behalf. And it wasn't in this particular project, but it was in a previous campaign that they ran. And they had actually decided that they wanted to do some real life promotion events as well. And they went outside a local supermarket, which is frequented by lots of people from the Latino community. And they encouraged people to give to the campaign, even if it was only $1 or $2 or $5. And I'll give you a little tip there. Although HipGive is of course a crowdfunding platform, and our main way of asking people to give is online through their credit card, it is possible to also receive cash donations. And the way you do it is, if people don't have a credit card and they still want to give to your campaign, or maybe it's just easier for them to pass you $1, $2 or $5 in a specific moment or event, and put all that money together, and then find somebody within your staff who has a credit card, and they can make that donation on their credit card in the name of all the people who had already given their smaller cash contributions. And that happens a lot, and we find it in communities where there's not a high level of credit card usage, then people are happy to give in smaller amounts and in different ways. So just make sure you bring it all together, and then somebody puts it on the campaign through their credit card before the campaign is over. So that was a couple of ideas from El Centro Hispano. We've also worked closely with an organization in Mexico called Ayúdame a Sonreír ante el Cáncer. They work with children who have cancer, and they're a volunteer group. They go in and spend a lot of time working with the families and the children to help them through the process. What their focus of the campaign and the communication strategy was all about making it friendly, making it warm, making it down to earth. And because the communities that they were working with in Mexico didn't have such a big awareness or familiarity with crowdfunding and with online giving. And then Lisette, who's the director, she said, we spent a lot of time explaining to people what it was all about. So their logical process for setting up their communication strategy was thinking carefully about their audience, and they decided to focus on the volunteers. They had a network of 100, 150 different volunteers, and their family and friends decided that was a really good way to reach into new groups of people in the community. And they chose WhatsApp because, well, to be fair, everybody I think nowadays spends a lot of time on WhatsApp to get things done. It's particularly prevalent in Mexico and the communities that they were working with. And it also is something which still feels very personalized. I think if you compare getting an email to getting a WhatsApp message, well then obviously the WhatsApp message feels much more personal, it feels much more direct. So it was a very useful way of giving that kind of closeness and warmth and friendliness to the campaign. During the Matching Funds Day, again, they tried to respond to every single message. If they couldn't do it immediately, within a few hours, they always wanted to make sure that people who were asking for information or guidance, or who had already given, were getting that feedback and felt very involved. And they used very specific information in their short messages to highlight the matching fund times and the links to the Donate Now button. So you can see in the little screenshots that we take from the WhatsApp, they have a message and the hours. In that matching funds occasion, there were 5 different times of the day. In your messages, it will be enough to just set out, at 12 o'clock, this is the time when your donation has the most chance of being doubled. Please donate at 12 o'clock on this date. And people need to have that information so clearly. They won't be able to read our minds, so we need to state it. And then, of course, the benefit of using WhatsApp or an online medium is that you can embed the hyperlink directly into the text. So they just need to click on that link that you've given to take them right to the page where they're going to be able to donate online. And then the other thing I loved about the way that Lisette and her team used WhatsApp is they made really good use of all the emoticons and the little images and pictures that you can send in messages nowadays. So you can see somebody already said, I already donated. And Lisette answers back saying, you're the best, Rami, thank you. And all the little celebration icons and emoticons in there. And that, again, makes people special. It makes people feel like it's a person-to-person connection. And then the last example I wanted to share with you today is Contextos. They're an organization that work in reading and literacy in El Salvador, but they are our Giving Tuesday champions, because year by year, they are really good at using matching funds and Giving Tuesday. So this is just a little example of how they do it. They try and keep it simple, and they focus on the messages that people want to share. And their target group that they've selected in many years has been lapsed donors, or people that already know the organization but maybe have not become donors yet. So that's an easier sell. To try not to convince somebody who's never heard of you is going to be difficult, but to try and convince somebody who already believes in your work, you just have never given a donation, much easier. They, again, were one of those organizations that have real life launch parties the day before the Matching Funds Day. They did a conference call with their board to make sure that the members of the board were going to be happy to share and take part actively in the campaign. They made sure that their emails were personalized, and they put in lots of donate now links, and they made lots of emails and telephone calls during the day. And you can see in the screenshots from some of their campaigns, they did really simple 2-for-1 messages. So perhaps, we understand these are matching funds. They're going to be matched up to a total of $500. It starts at 12 o'clock until the money runs out. We know all that technical information. It's important that we do try and share that with the donors as much as possible. But the first off message should just be, your donation can be doubled. Donate now. It means more to us now than ever before. And this 2-for-1. Who doesn't love a 2-for-1 when you go to the supermarket or the store? So donations 2-for-1 and Giving Tuesday is a really simple message. And then they backed it up in the text of their Facebook post saying, thanks to everybody who's given, help us do this. Only today, your donations can be duplicated on HipGive. So a really clear message. And then again, they did the great thank you messages, and they didn't just thank people with an email message. They put together these little thank you messages with a list of donors, and they published that on social media throughout the day. So there's just a couple of examples of how you can put all of these ideas into practice as part of an integrated communication strategy for your campaign. I don't know if you have any questions. Please do feel free to raise your hand, to put something in the chat box. And Michael, I'll pass back to you as well, so you can tell us what's next for the Salute for All campaign.
Great. Thank you so much, Anita. I really appreciate it. So before we delve into any more of the sort of technical questions that you may have around this campaign, I thought we could use some of this time to hear from some of the groups on today's webinars. So first off, let's turn our attention to the poll that I administered earlier in the webinar, so we can get like a better picture of the group's makeup today. So the first question was, have you ever done online fundraising? And 75% of you have. So looks like there's some experience there with crowdfunding. The second question was, what areas of health equity does your organization work on? And this was a multiple choice, so you could select more than one. So it looks like we have some good representation with immigration, mental health, healthcare access, and then a little less so when it comes to food security, environmental justice, and other facets of health equity as well. And then finally, the third question was, what are the top results that you are hoping to achieve from the Salute for All crowdfunding campaign? And again, most people could, or you could actually choose more than one choice for this. And it looks like basically everybody chose all 4 values. So that was to increase visibility for your organization, gain new donors, win matching funds, and of course, build your muscle and capacity around crowdfunding itself. So thank you all for completing that quick little poll, and I think it goes a long way into kind of giving us a clear picture of the kind of organizations who are interested in participating in Salute for All. So with that, why don't I go ahead and open up the floor to see if anybody wants to maybe briefly talk about some ideas you have for a crowdfunding project and how it fits into your organization's overall strategy. And feel free to respond to other folks' ideas as well, and we can get some cross-pollination here going as we're on the webinar. So with that, let me go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and allow everybody to talk. So Okay, so folks should be unmuted now. And if you don't feel like, I know sometimes it's kind of hard to get folks to talk on these webinars, so if you feel more comfortable typing your responses, then feel free to do so too, and Anita or I can read them out loud. So I'll just give it a moment or so for folks to chime in. Okay, so Vanessa Tan, thank you so much for your question. What if a donor wants to give, but they want to give through their donor advised fund? Looks like more of a technical question. Anita, do you want to go ahead and field that?
Yeah. The main ways of giving to the HipGive crowdfunding campaign through the platform will be, like I said, the credit card donations. If you have cash, you can put that through someone's credit card, and we are also able to accept donations to our bank account, and if they'll be labeled for your campaign, for your organization. So that is what we can reflect on the total on your HipGive page. But if people want to give to your campaign through other means, by all means encourage that. It will be something that we might not be able to reflect on the official homepage of your project on HipGive, but you can reflect those additional donations in your communications campaign. So when you say to people, we had a goal of 5,000 and we've received 2,000 so far on our HipGive page, and an additional donation of 1,000 from another source, so you can use the information in that way to encourage people to and reflect the overall progress that you've made in reaching your goal. But that is something that we wouldn't integrate directly into your crowdfunding campaign on HipGive.
Great. Any other questions? It can be a technical question. It can be, an idea you have for a crowdfunding project, or any sort of general questions about HipGive. Now's the time to go ahead and ask those. Oh, thank you. Okay, so Vanessa with a follow-up question says, will they be able to get the matching funds as well?
I believe the answer to that is unfortunately no, because of the way that we have set up the relationship with the organizations that provide us matching funds. We're only able to deliver the matching funds for the organizations that are processed directly through the platform. And that helps make sure there's a lot of precision and accountability in the way that we distribute the funds.
And Vanessa, thanks you for that answer, and thank you for the question. So any other folks on the line have any questions or comments, concerns? Remember, you can click on the hand raising icon and I will unmute you, or also you can go ahead and type your question in the chat box.
Well, I would be interested to know if anyone has any ideas already for the campaign. You can sound off with us, what do you think might work, and we can give you a little bit of feedback and ideas. I see Vanessa has another question. How long does a campaign have to last to make it successful? Oh, that's a good question. But really the success doesn't depend so much on the length as the intensity of the work that the team is willing to carry out to drum up support. In general terms, we found that on HipGive, the most successful campaigns are between 4 and 6 weeks. And that gives the team enough time to organize a really strong launch. Maybe there's a little bit of a lull in the middle, and then they can work hard towards the close of the campaign again. And especially if you do have a medium to ambitious goal, then you'll probably need a month to 6 weeks to make it work. But I know that many organizations prefer even more high intensive campaigns of 3 or 4 weeks, because they just want to make sure that it gets done and that people hear about it, make a really strong impact, and then the organization needs to move on to other priorities. So it depends a little bit as well on the calendar and the overall workload in the organization. The dates that we've decided on for the Salute for All reflect that. And so we'll be asking organizations to make sure their projects are online and submitted to the platform and HipGive. I think it's the 21st of June. And then that gives us time to approve, review, get them up and published on time for the launch and the first Matching Funds Day, which will be 28th of June. There'll be another Matching Funds Day in the middle of July, and that's precisely to help people keep up the momentum, have another focal point, another reason to get in touch with all of our audiences and say, you know, keep on giving, and we're still getting towards our goal. And then we'll be asking that organizations close out their campaigns in July, so that we can help them through the administration process and get the funds out to them in August and probably September as well. But that doesn't mean that that's the end of the overall Salute for All. That's just the crowdfunding portion of Salute for All. And as Michael explained, there'll be a lot more work going on long term to raise the visibility and status and investment and voice of all of the great organizations that are working in health equity projects.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So it looks like time is running down. Is there any other, oh, one more question from Vanessa. Do you guys have a planning template that you can share with us?
Yes, that's precisely what we do. I have put together a little guide of how you can think about your strategy for your communication. So if we think about those 4 phases, the phase of how to put together your project was what we dealt with in the last webinar, and that provides a really good step-by-step guide. And then the document or the worksheet that we'll be sending out as part of the material for this webinar, support material, have exactly that. It's just a set of questions that you can jot down your answers and think logically through how you want to put together your communication campaign so that you have the most chance of success. So we'll be happy to share that with you.
Yeah, and to that end, so for all of you on the call, we will be sharing this recording as well as the slide deck, and as Anita alluded to, a really helpful communications worksheet as well that'll help you kind of think through this well ahead of time before project launch. And of course, don't forget to also tune in for the 3rd and final webinar of the Salute for All campaign. And Anita, maybe you can give them just a quick little overview of what that will be on. Yeah,
well, in the 3rd webinar, we really do want to hear a little bit more from you guys, because one thing is to participate in training and have somebody tell you in theory how everything is, and it's another ballgame completely to sit down and have, think about how you're going to do it in your own organization with all of the opportunities and maybe some of the restraints that you have as well. So we'd love to hear back from you and get your questions and suggestions either before the webinar or during the webinar. You can tell us, and again, we can act as a sounding board. Michael and I have been working on these types of projects for a long time. We have a lot of different insights into what has worked for other organizations that we'd be happy to share. And we'd also be looking at those, just the little key things, the little details that make a world of difference in boosting your campaign and getting you over that finish line, raising the amount of funds that you need. So that's what we'll be sharing in the next webinar.
That's exactly right. So feel free to reach out to me with any questions you have, like I said, to talk about, the overarching kind of campaign for Salute for All, or any of the sort of crowdfunding specifics related to matching funds or getting your project up. We want to really be here to support you through this process, not only in creating the project, but in also, during the actual campaign and after as well. So thank you again for joining today's webinar, and look out for our follow-up email, and I look forward to seeing the creation of all your wonderful projects. Anita, any last thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's time to just jump in. If you think this is a good opportunity, if you want your share of $10,000 in matching funds, then you've got to be in it to win it. So please do go on HipGive and get your username, start creating a project. You can start that draft and keep working on it. You don't have to do it all in one sitting. And that way we'll know as well that you're interested and can maybe even give you some pointers along the way. So I look forward to seeing you in HipGive.
Great. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day. Bye-bye.